The Ballad of Johnny Arcane by Jim Nail, read by Jim Nail. Chapter 2, Johnny Loses His Voice, Part 2. At nightfall, Johnny came across a roadhouse nestled in a stand of willows on the shore of a river. He could tell by the color of the light they were burning corn oil, and there was music from within, fiddles and guitars, and the sound of drunken voices. Two separate herds of goats mingled about, untethered on the grounds. Johnny knew there were two because of the brands burnt on their haunches. One, the trident, the other, the hourglass. He was hungry, but the encounter with the messenger had left him shaken, unsure of any further human contact. Yet he had to eat. Cautiously, he pushed on the heavy wooden slab of a door. The air inside was warm and redolent with spices, especially coriander. Corn lamps flickered in wall sconces. The musicians stood on a raised platform at the other end of the room. 2 fiddles, 3 guitars. He recognized the melody. The shoe becomes the foot that wears it. Perhaps he might join in them on his mandolin. Perhaps that might untie the weight from his heart. He eased his way in. Long, heavy tables filled the room, and people sat at all of them. Men and women, goat people with their colorful rags, farmers in their bib overalls, wood carvers with sawdust in their hair, mummers, male and female, in white robes. Beer steins full and empty cluttered the tables, and heavy stone bowls ladled with some kind of stew. People looked up as he passed between the tables. A few eyes lingered. There was no place to sit until at last he saw a tiny booth off in a corner, away from the musicians, the only single table in the house. A stout woman appeared with a tray. "You'd be wantin' some supper, I s'pose," she said. "Tonight we be serving goat stew with parsnips and rutabagas, and a fine pale ale." The stew was warm and flavorful, and the ale was strong and quickly went to Johnny's head, but it only served to tighten the conspicuous cloak of silence that enshrouded him. Everyone was conversing. Everyone was together, laughing, singing. Stories were everywhere. He was the only person who was alone. How he wished he were invisible. How he wished he could join them, for to join them would be to become invisible. But the force of his silence was like a repellent shield. Several times he almost got up and bolted for the door, but he had to eat. His body demanded it. So he settled back and listened to the conversations that surrounded him. "Rudder, you got an onion in your beard." The speaker was a scrawny goat man whose rag shirt was mostly crimson and gold, signifying the flat grasslands of the north. The man, named Rudder, did indeed have an onion in his long curly beard, or more correctly, a dried purple shallot tied to the beard hairs with a piece of twine. "Well, yes, I do have an onion in my beard. I put it there just this morning. I had to come through Bastard Pass, and there's horn pigs there. Horn pigs won't go near a man with an onion in his beard. The goat man snorted. Ha! Never heard of that before. I always thought the horn pigs was afraid of carbide. A woman spoke. Broad-shouldered, small calloused fingers. She wore the frilled vest of a dressmaker. You silly men. You know there's no such thing as horn pigs. Oh yes there are. I see them. What you see are javelinas, not horn pigs. There's only one thing that javelinas are afraid of. You know what that is? No. What? You. They're afraid of you. A great round of laughter circled the table. Ha ha, Rudder, the goat man cackled. I'm gonna grab that onion out of your beard and throw it in my stew. No, you're not. Yes, I am. And the goat man thrust his hand into the folds of Rudder's beard. Rudder swung his muscular arm, and the goat man clattered to the floor. There was applause, and the music swelled. The dressmaker turned to another woman, also a dressmaker, seated next to her. Riddles vary from place to place, you know. They don't put sheepskin on the roof tiles down to Beggar's Bog. And they burn their stock fires, and they burn their stock files on the full moon. The other woman chewed a corncob pipe. Makes more sense to burn them on the dark of the moon, she replied. That's when you need the light. Well, it ain't always about making sense. Sometimes it's just about doing things the same. Like you always sleep on the same side of your husband, or you sit at the same place at the table. The other dressmaker set down her pipe and lifted her stein. I knew a man that had these terrible fears. Like he was afeard of the sky, 'cause it was so big. He thought it was gonna swallow him up. Couldn't even go outside lest he was in a forest where you couldn't see the sky. The doctor made him take all the herbs, but it didn't do any good. Then one day this man, he got a toothache, and his tooth swelled up so big it just popped out of his head. And then all of a sudden, he didn't have the fears anymore. So he took the tooth into the doctor. The doctor said, "The roots of this tooth is full of blasting salt. Did you ever chew on that shit?" The man said, "Yeah, well, I did when I was young, 'cause I heard it would make me, virile." Doctor said, "You should never chew on bad shit. It goes right to the roots of your tooth and it gets into your brain. You never know. What you're doing right now might be good, might be bad." The first dressmaker leaned across the table. "It's always good to get up early and watch the full moon going down. It fixes your speech. Not so good to watch it coming up, though." The second dressmaker, "You should rub your feet in the morning before you get out of bed. That way the sickness can't get in through your feet." Rudder slammed his stein down so quickly the beer stayed in the air and then fell like rain on the tabletop. "It's poison what makes you sick." "Of course it's poison," said the goat man. "What else would it be?" The second dressmaker leaned across the leaned across the lake of spilled ale. Again, the second dressmaker leaned across the lake of spilled ale. "Well, some people say it's little bugs so small you can't even see 'em gets into your body, like they be on the floor when you set your feet down." Ryder folded his arms across his chest. No, it's poison. You heard about Dr. Clearwater, didn't you? He did an experiment with small doses of different poisons to determine the qualitative difference between the discomforts. What? Did he give them to the pigs? No, he took them himself. He wanted to experience it firsthand. Goatman scratched his chin. Sounds like a sojourner to me. At that moment, Johnny felt a pair of eyes upon him. Not the eyes of anyone who had been speaking, a man further down the table wearing no distinguishing uniform of any trade. Just a plain white shirt and a brown collarless jacket. No hat. The man held Johnny's stare just for a moment, then turned back to conversation with someone next to him. All the uneasiness rushed back into Johnny's body as the voices around him swelled into an unintelligible staccato, like locusts at the window. He felt a throbbing in his temples and in his legs. He looked down at his empty bowl and stein. Time to go then. I am a bruise in this place. I am a lobelia to be expelled. I am a hairball. He stood slowly and scanned the sea of faces between the table and the door. So many shoulders to jostle, and toes on which to tread. But there was another door at the nearby corner, a short, rounded one, perhaps for the children or for the dogs. He dropped to his hands and knees and slipped, unnoticed, between the feet and the table legs until he burst into the bracing cool of the night.